Oh, thank you so much for the warm welcome. I really enjoy being here and sharing at least some of my life insights. I'm working for a think tank, and the last 30 years we focused on one question only. And that question was how to enrich organizations with collective intelligence. Believe it or not, it exists, although we sometimes have in mind the collective stupidity, which is usually frustrating and expensive. But how to enhance organizations with collective intelligence was our focus. Of course, this all started not in the last 30 years of my life, but in the first 30 years of my life. In 1981, when I was 18, I only had skiing in mind. So that was it. And I dreamt about the Olympic Games 1984, where I wanted to at least qualify and earn a medal in slalom. I had a sponsor, my father was my manager, and in that winter I trained and I was certain to do it. And my life changed. In 81, this is me, in the front row because my dad died in a car accident and I inherited the business. So from 1 second to the other, my life of a ski racer vanished in front of my eyes and my life as a general manager appeared. And of course, my leadership with that very limited set of values of fast is good, slow is bad, was kind of intriguing. My dad was running a ski area and I thought, well, how difficult could it be? I spent all my life in skiing, so having people in double chairs going up and skiing down, no big deal. 150 people instructing and understanding even what the workload is, distributing it and making sure that it is done, to my surprise, was not that easy at all. Because even copying and mimicking my father's instructions, nobody did, as I have instructed them. So it ended up in even more workload on my side and more resistance on the employee side from 1 year after another. The best customers disappeared, the cost exploded, and the talents have left. But it took me another 2 years because I was a very endurance ski racer, so I was also a very endurant general manager. But in '83, that was it. I was exhausted, the cost exploded, customers disappeared, and talents not really there. I called for an employee assembly with 150 guys, and I invited everybody. From a university professor who volunteered in the seasons in winter, to the dishwasher, the whole range you can imagine being employed in ski areas. And I announced what I was convinced of, that we have to file bankruptcy. So these people were shocked, and I also instructed them to look for another job. And I thought my work is done, so I went to the bar, left them alone in a conference room, and ordered a beer at 9 o'clock in the morning. So that was the time my post-heroic leadership started. Because there in the bar, it was not just me there, but all the guys were mingling around the balance sheet and the profit and loss statements, and they found out after a while different ideas to my surprise. So they approached me and said, hey Michael, actually, if we can claim back some tax refunds, we could make it for another 2 weeks, and then some of the guys would deserve unemployment money. So I said, well, having surrendered already, well, why not? It's a good idea. And by the end of the day, that pattern repeated because in a magical transition of responsibility from me to the group, these guys took over actually entrepreneurial thinking and co-created together with dishwashers and accountants and even guests mingled around it and university professors, one idea after the other, and by the end of the day we had a full-blown strategy, a way forward, also announcing that we are not bankrupt actually, that actually there is a good way forward, and 5 years later we 10x'd our business. And I really say we because I didn't do it, I just granted it. And in that episode of my life, there is the pattern of collective intelligence hidden underneath, because what the secret ingredients of that amazing success are, first of all, is diversity. We could not have had the same results with a 40-year-old engineering or accounting perspective only. We needed that wide range of perspectives and different opinions in one conference room, working on the same data and co-creating. So the diversity is key, and always when diversity vanishes, also the collective intelligence suffers. Second part was, of course, the transparency. I provided these guys with the real balance sheets, which made my mother at the time, she was the shareholder of the whole thing, really upset, because everybody in the village would have, of course, known how much money we don't have. And for her, it was an embarrassing moment. But it was critical to the mission to really prove the point and letting these people work on honest data so that they have really a good chance to co-create right ideas and not just some assumptions. The third part in that great day, which has been very decisive for my life, was, of course, that I was in my surrendering mode, rather a servant leader than a heroic leader, and gave immediate and instant feedback. So when they came with an idea, like the ones with the unemployment or the tax refunds or making changes in the processes, I immediately made a decision in real time out of, first of all, surrendering, but then more and more trusting the crowd to come up with really great ideas. So the part of real-time feedback is critical. If I would have waited a long time, then of course everybody would have lost the motivation. And finally, I empowered the guys with the ideas to carry out the tasks themselves. So it was actually an unbelievable great moment for me to really end up in a leadership role which was effective. And later in our research, we looked to the same patterns in nature. So a beehive usually has about 40 to 60,000 bees. And at the time we researched that, we had a client with almost the same amount of employees. The difference was, of course, that in that company, in financial industry, a poor lady called Anne, I'm not allowed to use her full name, Anne was in charge as the only one bee in the hive to take care for innovations. And this is so different to nature, where when there's a warm weather after winter, 40,000 bees go and look for innovation or for honey all together. So of course Anne, the bee in that hive of 40,000 people, she quit her job because it's too exhausting. So we helped this company also to think innovation in a totally different way, of a crowdsourced innovation altogether. Nevertheless, this was not the most intriguing moment. What really baffled me is the unbelievable coordination skills nature has, and every managing director, every entrepreneur, and every C-level should be dreaming about that form of perfectionism nature shows us. If you announce a direction, and a 10, a 20, 100,000 people are following. It's even difficult in a family. Get your kids in the car in the morning and see how your coordination skills are. And when you think you're ready, there's still one or two, they need to go to the loo or lost their telephone or whatsoever. So coordination is a big issue in the topic of collective intelligence. The issue on that side are amazing, because fire ants cannot swim. So a single individual would drown. What they do to cross the river is they build a raft all together and develop new skills far beyond the capability of the individuals. And that's the same what we see in all organizations. Not a single person could build a car or an aircraft or a financial institution. It's always a collaborative effect, and out of the great idea that all together are much more than the sum of its part, showing different skills, this is a competitive advantage. Last but not least, the fourth dimension is really baffling. It's the dimension of predicting. Nature is so smart to predict the future. This is an evolutionary advantage, and we should, in the organization, take credits and tools for using that skill from nature in modern term organizations. Having said that, I want to guide you through 3 layers where you can find collective intelligence, basically society, business, and organizational setups. There are much more, but my time is limited, so I will start with first things first. Imagine you're on a lonely island in somewhere in the Caribbean Sea, and you are together with one chimpanzee. So you and one of our ancestors. Who will have more chances for survival? I mean, I would bet on a chimpanzee because he's much more skilled to eat what's there, and you would really not even be capable of making fire or warm yourself, or one injury and you have an infection. So that brings you into a really critical situation. If there are 7 humans and 7 chimpanzees, I think the odds are changing to the humans. And this is because we are collectively so smart, using abstract language and fiction to plan, to organize. We would even capture all those chimpanzees in an instant because we're a collaborative species as such. Even in macroeconomics and in politics, that phenomenon is visible. Mr. Gorbachev and the entire communism did not break down because the philosophy was so poor. Actually, they broke down because of a central disadvantage in comparison to a decentral disadvantages. And when it comes to order and supply, planning that from Moscow for the entire Soviet Union is a big of a job, and you're overwhelmed by data you cannot process. If it's decentral happened, every bakery takes care of demand supply, that's easy. We find the phenomena all over the place. From our democracy, where we understand in our gut feeling it's much better to work all together than to foster some tyranny, that's clear. But it's also in our legal system that juries make a much better decision, that traffic, where decentral responsibility is there, dramatic decrease of injuries and cost and damages of accidents. And of course, Wikipedia is a great example where the Wikipedia was not just really out there and everybody knew it, they outperformed the Encyclopedia Britannica in an instant, collaborating of volunteers for a better way to find information. And if you ever participate in a game show, please go for the jury joker, because experts may be good, but experts depend so much on the rules that they usually cannot predict the future when the rules are changing. So go for that. In mathematical terms, in business, it's very clear that we usually underestimate the power of a guessing curve. If you let a crowd guess about the future, the ordinary average in mathematical terms are not just collectively the average, they are smart and wise at the same time, because this is actually the algorithm behind all that. One great example where you can see that is when in '86, where I was not even 30-something, the space shuttle exploded, and 20 minutes after that explosion, and the parts haven't been there back on Earth, the New York Stock Exchange already responded, because 280,000 people were trading, and all the suppliers from NASA were hit. So Lockheed Martin, Rockwell, and Morton was even stopped from trading because it fell through the roof down into the cellar. It took the ordinary commission 6 months to investigate their case and find out that they really produced a malfunctioning part. So if you let your fantasy strive into that difference between 21 minutes of the wisdom of the crowd making a right decision and 6 months, of course, it's unbelievable and enhances hopefully your fantasy. We have seen that all, of course, also on organizational level. If we look to the time 10,000 BC, when we're still in the Stone Age, of course, we were in tribal societies, not really well connected, and the only thing we could do is share stories in a campfire. Some 3,000 years ago, it kicked in, especially from the army, to set up power structures to control soldiers. And modern organizational setups are still in that paradigm that they want to control something with power, very similar to I did in '83, with very little success, because power is only possible if the environment is moving very slowly. So an administration could work. If there's not a lot of change around, then it could work. The future, of course, and I wrote 84 there, when the internet emerged, that communication was for free, networks and interconnectedness are the future. So in organization setup, this is the moment to enhance the informal network of the crowd in a cross-functional way, across the silos, end-to-end, including the ecosystem, and make smart decisions out of gathering all those informations. So for all who still believe in power and control, it's very good if you're a very slow environment, but in the modern exponential times, this is an obsolete model. It will not work in the future. Having said that, the whole thing comes down to enhancing the collective intelligence of your teams, your families, your organizations with one superpower tool, and that's communication. The more you communicate, the more data you have, and the better your decisions are statistically. So not just communication and information sourced from one particular department or party, but cross-functional. So similar to the experiment I made in my youth, bring together all the people. It's not even as expensive. And the interesting part is the more communication you can enhance and really build on, the more coordination, of course, you achieve. And it's not just the content of communication, it's rather also as critical is the sentiments behind the words, which drive that communication, especially the sentiments of engagement and motivation would give you a great hint whether your performance is kicked up. For a leadership perspective, the only thing you have to bring to the party is a different mindset. Similar to me in my youth, trying to put it all together on my own is also a wrong assumption to believe that only a few experts can run the show. And the way out of it is the attitude is everybody is right, at least in the beginning. If you can embrace that, everybody is right, you would be more open to connect ideas, even crazy ideas, and build on those ideas to really foster the collective intelligence and also the idea to build on each other's ideas. Bringing it all together, it's very important to enrich the leaders. If they have a big ego and want to do it themselves, you can't help it, but if they kind of surrendered to the reality, it's easier to enrich their minds. If they take a participative approach to enrich the crowd, you can co-create strategies which really deliver a great impact. So having said that, all together, I hope this is an idea you can take to your families, to your teams, and especially to your organizations, because there's one truth in it. This is very simply better together. Thank you.